Welcome to Crafts and Minis. I just wanted to give you a quick tip on basing some vegetation for your tabletop games. So in front of you, you see a few things that I'm going to use in basing, and you can see some of the almost completed work that I have there towards the top of the screen. I'm using these particular washers. These are 2-inch washers that have a small hole, because when you get washers, you can get them in with all sorts of different sizes of holes in the middle. And what I do is I just put a little piece of tape over the hole, and I do that on the top side of whatever I'm going to base. So that's the first step. Get yourself some base. Now, you could use cardboard if you wanted. You could use MDF bases. I just like the heft of washers, especially for terrain, because you don't want your terrain just being easily just knocked over or pushed around. And the other things I'm going to be using here, I got at one of the big box hobby stores. These particularly were from Michael's, and they come on something like this. So this particular one right now, as this video is being filmed, was 40% off, and I think it was $10. I might even have the tag still. Yeah, so this was $10 US retail, but 40% off. So I got this for $6. And what it has on it are 6 of these bigger blossoms, I'm going to call them. And then it had, I got to do my quick counting. That's 5. Well, I already used 6, and I still have 9. So that must be 18. So that's a pretty good deal. 6 big, 18 of the smaller ones that I'm using to base up as vegetation for the tabletop. Now, what you see here is some hot glue, obviously, but that's not what I use to stick these to their base. I use an air hardening clay DOS. Now, I get this also at the big box hobby stores and hobbies and craft stores, and you can get online too, I'm sure. But I like this a lot. I actually was using this to try to sculpt some heads on some big monsters, which was a lot of fun. I showed you in one of my videos, like a Funko Pop toy that I was doing that on. But what I do is I just take some of this air hardening clay, and you just take a chunk of it. Now, you want to have a cup of water nearby just to be able to smooth maybe a little bit. But what's nice about this is anything you do with this clay is going to be covered up. So I'm just going to take one of these, and here's what I do. So I put it on the base the way I want it. That's going to be a nice base. Now, you got to look at the blossom that you're going to be using. And I have these other style here that I want to show you as well, that I based up like that. Now, you just need to take a quick look and see, okay, do I want to stick this whole thing in there? No. If I was going to make up another one of the plants with these particular leaves, I would clip off with my flush clippers, so it has a little point that I could stick in there. Now, you could do this like I've done already, where you just keep the same type of leaves on the base, or you can get crazy and mix them up, which, you know, real vegetation has a mix usually of different stuff in there, right? But here's what I'm going to do, just for simplicity's sake. Now, you see, I left it pretty damaged there, so I'm going to just form it back into a nice little base. And this stuff dries rock hard. I know Mel the Train Tutor has a great video and uses this quite a bit, and that's where I saw it from. So I'm going to stick it here in the base. And the nice thing about using this air hardening clay is I can really get a nice fit and just see how it's going to look like that. Now, you want to make sure it's kind of centered, although again, with vegetation, it's not going to matter that much. But you just want to make sure it looks good to your eye. Now, once I put it in the clay, I'm going to be careful and take it out. And see, there's a cavity left in there on the base. And then I take my DM Scotty approved glue gun. And I know, Scotty, you got a new one. I don't have any hard feelings. I love this blue one, though, that has the switch that I keep knocking all the time to turn off when I don't want it off. But that's all good. That's not a knock on Scotty's recommendation, by the way. I love this glue gun. I love the nozzle especially. So what I do, and you got to do this pretty quick, because as you know, when you're working with hot glue, this stuff is going to dry up really quick. So you put some hot glue in the cavity, and then you take your piece of plastic vegetation, and you just put it in there. And now it's going to start hardening right away, but I'm also working the clay then around it, okay? Now here's what's cool. The air drying clay is going to harden, but I want to just put a little more hot glue around it so it stays in place and it's all good. Now, this step you could wait to do until after the clay is dry, but it's really not going to hurt either way. So I'm just putting this all the way around. Now, the way I base, oops, sorry, a little out of frame there. The way I base is I'm going to come back over this later with some pumice, and I'll show you some of that I might use from Vallejo. But you can use anything you want. If you want to just use some white glue and sand, or I like to use the wood glue and sand sometimes, or the clay kitty litter in different spots, and then the medium sand, playground sand or construction sand in other parts. Awesome. But that's what you do. You get it like that, and then really I'm going to let this dry. And then I would use something like my Vallejo ground texture here. This is the rough grape pumice. I like it the little more rough. My favorite of this actually is the lava. Now, you might go to the store, like my local hobby shop, Tabletop Game and Hobby, awesome. They have like a whole selection now of these Vallejo ground textures that I love. My favorite, and I said this in another video, is the lava, the black lava. Not like dark mud or black mud or something. It needs to say lava because I just like the texture more on those. But what you do with this, and this has already been used some, so you grab it, and then I'll take the one that's had a little chance to dry, and you just layer it then around. Now this stuff's going to dry hard. The reason I like this pumice is because it gives me a little time to work. And if I wanted to, I could take that clay kitty litter, or I could take some gravel, some sand, and put it right in the pumice, and that'll harden up and act as a glue. And that's all you'd need. But you see, I would do this all the way around with this pumice. And then you need to start thinking ahead, okay, how am I going to get this on the table? This plastic stuff, I haven't done a ton of experimentation for this type of vegetation, but really, I wouldn't paint it. I wouldn't paint the vegetation, the leaves, right? And those who work with this type of stuff don't recommend that either, because it's super difficult to get into. And the reason I got this is because I like the coloration already. Now, you could use an airbrush and change up the colors a little bit that way if you wanted to. Awesome. You could allow this to dry and just spray paint it all one color. Great. I like the look of this vegetation. And once this dries and I paint the base the same color I paint the rest of the bases for my terrain, this is going to look awesome on the tabletop. But I just wanted to show you here, you can get this vegetation in all sorts of different styles. And this big one I got here was actually on clearance. Take a look at this. Okay, this retails, this whole big thing, for $18. Now, would I buy it for $18? Probably not, but look at that price. $4.49 for this monster of grass and leafy plants. And since I just snip them off and then put them in the clay, I'm good to go. So this is just a little encouragement in your hobby. I'm playing a D&D game now where they're getting out of a wasteland, going into a grassland. It's going to be some forests, and these plants would look great as you know, a little ground coverage in the forest. And what's kind of cool about them, like these especially, you know, might not have a real world corresponding plant, you know, in our world, but it's kind of cool to have some that look a little fantastic, right? Like these, I put 3 of these blooms together, and I just think it looks so cool. Now, is there going to be a little bit of a challenge painting this base? Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a challenge, not going to lie. But I'll make it happen. And that's part of the fun of our hobby, is just trying stuff out and seeing what you can do. I'm smoothing down here a little piece of hot glue that got a little crazy. It was sticking up just a little bit. But that's what I wanted to share with you today. You can get a whole bunch of ground coverage to match your existing terrain's basing style and your miniatures basing style. Like I like to have a consistent look with my miniatures for the most part in my basing, with something like this. Do yourself a favor, get some of these 2-inch washers. They come in so handy, especially for basing large miniatures for D&D, large monsters. Get yourself some different ground covering. I know I got these at like big box hobby stores, but I also got some on sale that I should have grabbed. I'll show in some other videos maybe, from pet stores that were on sale, that go, like, people know about aquarium plants, of course, that go for in water, but also they sell plastic ones for like reptiles aquariums, which is really cool too. So there's just a bunch of different styles out there at your pet stores, at your big box hobby stores, and if you do enough of these, you're going to be able to fill out a game table. And it's so cool to be able to throw these on the table too, next to whatever trees you try to use, because a variety of this stuff just looks so good. V, the crafting muse, I really was inspired by seeing one of her table setups, which was so cool with all the vegetation. And there are so many great videos out there on YouTube on how to do this stuff. I just wanted to add another perspective of using the air hardening clay with a little hot glue, taking some different types of vegetation, mounting it on your 2-inch washer, putting down that pumice, and then you get to paint it up and make it look fantastic. So this is your encouragement that you just need to dive in, make some of that terrain for your table, take it up to that next level, and go get after your hobby.